Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue my series on adapting the fighting fantasy rules to a Twine game using the sword and planet subgenre of science fiction to inspire the setting and plot. So, in the game, in what little of the game has been written so far, you or your character is transported to another planet. They are a person from roughly the modern world. It's kept vague, but it seems to be at least the 20th or the 21st century. And they're suddenly on this other planet, living with hunter-gatherers, sleeping on the ground, and so on. And to simulate that, I have a temporary loss of skill. You lose 2 skill points, or at least most of the characters do. One of the character choices has a sort of special ability that they don't. But sword and planet characters are very resilient, typically. They are transported across hundreds of light years and land on this other planet, and they're fine to, they're sort of suddenly they're sword fighting and having adventures, and they're quite fine psychologically and physically. They adapt very quickly, if not straight away. So, in keeping with that convention, I have your character regain their skill fairly quickly. However, there is a problem, and that is that, of course, you don't want to reduce the player's skill twice. You only want that to happen once. You don't want to give the players their skill back twice. You only want that to happen once. And you don't want to give the player their skill back until you've taken it away, right? And that's fine if events happen in a set order, and therefore at any point you can say, well, at this point they've lost the skill but haven't yet gained it back, or at this point they've gained the skill back, or whatever it may be. Unfortunately, of course, this is a choose your own adventure style story, and we can't always say that. And in fact, I've realized that a player might be at a given point, and they may have lost the skill and not gotten it back. They may have lost the skill and gotten it back, or they may not have lost it yet. And so in order to make sure that the right thing happens, that everyone loses it once and then gets it back once, we need some way of keeping track of what stage the player is at, or what has happened to the player so far. And we can imagine a lot of other situations where we might need to keep track of what's happened in the past. So, for example, the player, let's say you're writing a game where the player talks to a particular character, and they can either upset this character or they can make friends with this character. Well, you can see how that could well be something that later on turns out to be important. So you alienated this important character, and so later on when you come back to their territory or something, they're hostile, or conversely, later on when you come back, they're friendly because you were, you made friends with them in the previous part of the story. So broadly, we need a way of keeping track of story elements. We need some variable that we can change that isn't any of the variables that we've got so far. And it isn't items, it isn't any of the attributes. It's keeping track of perhaps more abstract stuff, more story related stuff. And that is what keywords are for. And I'm going to demonstrate the code for how that works in the rest of this video. Now, keywords work very, very similarly to items And if you think about what items do in choose your own adventure style games, you will be able to see that, yeah, they do very similar things. We need to be able to give the player a particular item. We need to be able to take that item away. We need to be able to check whether the player has a given item and go to different parts of the game based on that fact. And the same is true of keywords. We need to be able to give them a keyword, take a keyword away, and test whether a given keyword exists. So the demonstration that I'm going to give, the code that I'm going to show you, is going to look very similar and work in a very similar way to the code for items. In fact, the only real difference is that items, I've decided to display the items that the character has in the sidebar, and the keywords are not displayed in the sidebar. That's really the only difference. So let's have a look at the code. I'll just zoom in so it's a bit easier to see. So these are the two codes that deal with keywords. As you can see, there's a reference to the array $K, and that is a new variable. That's one that I haven't talked about yet. K, of course, stands for keywords. It's set up the way any other array would be set up. There's another difference with items, I guess, that items, we have an array with the names of the items, which is a consequence of the fact that we have to display them in the sidebar if the player has them. Whereas with keywords, I don't have an array with the items. I just have in the comments, I have a list, excuse me, in the comments, I have a list of keywords. And of course, there's currently only one. But of course, the idea is that we will add more as the story gets bigger. And they can grow and grow. I did an online project called Age of Fable many years ago. And from memory, I think there was at least 100 keywords. Because you keep having ideas of, oh yeah, that could affect this, and once you sort of get into the story and get into the plot or plots of the story, you keep thinking of ways in which particular things could affect other things, or at least that's what I find. And so you find that the keyword list tends to sort of grow and grow. So at the moment it's very well, as small as it could be. It's only got one, but I would expect that it will get very big. So, as I said before, we have 18 and 19. 18 being we set a keyword to a particular value, and then we go to a particular paragraph. Most of these codes end in, and then we go to a particular paragraph because, of course, we need to continue the story. And then 19 is branching based on keyword. If a particular keyword is 1, we go to one place. If it's 0 or undefined, we go to a different place. In other words, do they have that keyword? So let me just do that so it's a bit easier to read. And let's sort of expand this because it's written in sort of code form, so it's not terribly easy to understand straight away. Remember that $S is the array that has the details of the different sections. So it has the text for all of the different sections, and then it has a series of numbers and strings that define what happens. $A is the current section that the player is in. So we're always looking at $S, $A, and then some number. and it's never 0 because that slot has the text or a message that there's no text, and it's never slot 1 because that's always this number. It's always slot 2 and above. So in this particular case, we look at slot 2, so $S, $A2, and we set that slot of the keyword array, $K, to whatever value is in slot 3. So in other words, slot 0 is the text, slot 1 is the number 18, slot 2 is which keyword are we talking about, slot 3 is what value do we want that keyword to have, and then slot 4 is just where do we go once we've made that operation. And then 19 is branching based on keyword. So we look at slot 2, that's the keyword that that's the number of the keyword that we want to deal with. We look at that slot of the K array. If that slot of the K array is set to 1, then we go to whatever paragraph is listed in slot 3. If it's 0 or undefined, and it'll be undefined if we haven't yet written any value into it, and it'll be 0 if we specifically set it to 0 using an 18 command. If it's 0 undefined, then we go to slot 4. So let's find some examples of that. So here is an example of 18. We have no text, we have 18. That tells us that we're going to do something with keywords. We're going to change the value of one of the slots in the $K array. The next number tells us that the slot or the keyword that we're dealing with is keyword 1. This tells us that we're setting that to 0. And then finally, once we've done that, go to paragraph 1AL3. This one we're setting it to 0 because because slot 1 is the keyword that says basically you've lost 2 skill, but you haven't gotten it back yet. And this part of the story is when you're getting used to sleeping rough, and therefore you gain your skill back. So let's find an example of 19 of branching. Actually, I'm not sure I've done any examples of 19 as yet. Now that I say that, yeah, no, I actually haven't. So I just write what an example would be. We would have set S example equal to, let's say, no text. 19, that tells us that we are looking at a keyword and we are going to go to a different paragraph depending on what we find in that keyword. Let's say 1. Let's say we're dealing with the same keyword, and then we would have 2 paragraphs. We would have let's call them S. Oops. Let's call them S yes and S no. So that is a hypothetical example of branching based on a keyword. That tells us it's branching based on a keyword. That tells us the keyword we're looking at is keyword 1. If we look at slot 1 in the $K array, if we find that it has a value of 1, we should go to S yes. And if we find anything else, we should go to S no. And so the code to make that happen looks like this. So if $S, $A1 is 18, that's the changing the value of a keyword. If it's 19, that is branching based on keyword. It's very straightforward. As you can see, it's only a few lines in both cases. 19's a little bit longer, but they're still both quite simple. We look at $S, $A2. We get the value of that. We set that slot of the K array equal to $S, $A3. Then we set A, which is the paragraph, to $S, $A4, and then we include main, i.e. we go back to the top of this page because this page is main. And that is changing the value of a keyword. Branching based on keyword. Is this one. We look at $S, $A2 again. Sorry, I picked the wrong bit there. We look at $S, $A2. We find the value there. We look at that slot of the K array, and if it is equal to 1, then we set A to be the value in slot 3. And if that's not the case, then we set A to be the value in slot 4. And then either way, we include main. We go back to the top. And so that is how we deal with keywords on a very simple, in a very simple way. You can see that I'm assuming that all keywords will only have a value of 1 or either 0 or undefined. And you can imagine some keywords that might have multiple values, but if that happens, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I might either deal with that by having multiple slots in the K array that deal with different aspects of it, or I might alter the code to account for the fact that they can have values other than 1 or not 1. But for now, for now that works. So that's how we do keywords. As I say, items work in virtually the same way. The code is almost identical. The only difference is the only real major difference is that in the case of items, because we're displaying them, we have to have something in the story caption page that goes through the items and displays the names of any items that the character currently has. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I might get on to automatic playtesting. In other words, playtesting that's not a person playing the game, but it's the program itself running through the game several hundred times and collating its results. Or I might write a little bit more of the story. I might write the bit of the story where you are wandering through the jungle, having left the ape-like hunter-gatherers, or having decided not to interact with them. It's really just whichever one I feel more interested in when I sit down to do it, to be honest. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.